The day the Portuguese governor tried to shame her, Queen Nzinga did something no one in the room would ever forget. When she entered the hall, there was no chair prepared for her. Only a mat lay on the floor, a silent message telling her she was not equal. Nzinga looked at the men who thought they had already won. Then she calmly ordered one of her servants to kneel. She sat on the servant's back, lifting herself to the same height as the governor. In that single moment, she showed the world that she would never bow to empire, insult, or fear. This was Queen Nzinga, and her story is one of courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable will. Nzinga was born around 1583 in the kingdom of Ndongo, in what is now Angola. At that time, Africa was facing one of its darkest periods. European powers were expanding across the continent, driven by greed, land hunger, and the transatlantic slave trade. The Portuguese had arrived with guns, soldiers, and traders. They wanted control of land and people. They built forts, made alliances, and used violence to force African kingdoms into submission. Ndongo and neighboring Matamba stood directly in their path. From a young age, Nzinga was different. She was not raised only to cook, marry, and obey. Her father, King Kilwanji, allowed her to learn state matters. She listened to political discussions, learned how treaties worked, and understood the value of words. She was taught to speak several languages, including Portuguese, which would later become one of her strongest weapons. She also learned about warfare, leadership, and how to read people's intentions. While others saw a girl, her father saw a future leader. The Portuguese pressure on Ndongo grew stronger as Nzinga became an adult. Villages were attacked, people were captured and sold into slavery, and local rulers were pushed aside. When Nzinga's brother became king after their father's death, the situation worsened. He struggled to control the kingdom and made enemies both inside and outside Ndongo. The Portuguese used his weakness to gain more power. Ndongo was on the edge of collapse. In 1622, a turning point came. The Portuguese governor invited Ndongo to peace talks. Instead of sending her brother, Nzinga was chosen to go. This decision changed history. When she arrived, she did not act like someone begging for mercy. She spoke with confidence and strength. She demanded that Ndongo be recognized as an equal kingdom. She demanded the return of captured lands and an end to the slave raids. The famous chair incident happened during this meeting, but it was only one part of her brilliance. Nzinga used language carefully. She understood Portuguese laws and used them against the Portuguese themselves. She agreed to be baptized as a Christian, taking the name Dona Ana de Sousa, not because she had suddenly changed her beliefs, but because she knew it would bring political advantage. She secured a peace agreement that gave Ndongo time to recover. For a moment, it seemed like her strategy had worked. But peace did not last. The Portuguese broke their promises, as they often did. They continued their attacks and supported rival leaders to weaken Ndongo from within. Soon after, Nzinga's brother died, and many believe she played a role in his death, though history is not clear. What is clear is that Nzinga became queen in a time of chaos, danger, and betrayal. As queen, Nzinga faced enormous challenges. Some of her own people doubted her because she was a woman. Enemies surrounded her kingdom. The Portuguese wanted her removed at all costs. Instead of surrendering, Nzinga chose resistance. She reorganized the army, formed new alliances, and moved her capital when necessary. When Ndongo became too difficult to defend, she took control of Matamba and made it her stronghold. Nzinga was not a ruler who stayed behind palace walls. She led from the front. She rode into battle, planned attacks, and inspired her soldiers with her presence. She adopted military strategies that confused and weakened the Portuguese. Her forces used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and disappearing into forests and hills. She welcomed escaped slaves, runaway soldiers, and anyone willing to fight for freedom. To many, her kingdom became a place of hope. What made Nzinga truly dangerous to the Portuguese was not just her strength, but her mind. She knew when to fight and when to negotiate. At times, she made alliances with the Dutch, who were enemies of Portugal. She used European rivalries to her advantage, proving she understood global politics long before many African leaders were given credit for it. She played one power against another, always seeking the best outcome for her people. Her rule challenged many traditions. Nzinga refused to be limited by expectations of gender. She wore both male and female clothing depending on the situation. She took on titles and roles usually reserved for men. Some accounts say she kept male companions dressed as women, a symbolic act meant to show her authority and control. Whether these stories were exaggerated by European writers or not, they show how deeply Nzinga unsettled colonial minds. For over 40 years, Nzinga resisted Portuguese control. That alone is extraordinary. Empires with guns and ships failed to break her spirit. Even when she lost battles, she never lost her purpose. She adapted, retreated, returned stronger, and fought again. Each year she remained in power was a reminder that Africa was not weak, silent, or willing to be conquered. As she grew older, Nzinga began to think about the future. Endless war had taken its toll on her people. She once again turned to diplomacy, not from weakness, but wisdom. In her later years, she strengthened ties with the Catholic Church, invited missionaries, and worked toward a stable peace. This move was not a surrender. It was a final strategy to secure her kingdom's survival after her death. Queen Nzinga died in 1663 at around 80 years old, an age few reached at that time, especially warriors. Her death marked the end of an era, but not the end of her influence. Even after her passing, resistance against Portuguese rule continued. Her name became a symbol of courage, defiance, and African pride. For a long time, colonial histories tried to erase or reduce her story. They painted her as cruel, strange, or dangerous because they could not accept a powerful African woman who outsmarted European empires. But oral traditions kept her memory alive. Songs, stories, and legends passed from generation to generation preserved the truth of who she was. Today, Queen Nzinga is remembered as one of Africa's greatest leaders. Streets, schools, and monuments carry her name. She stands as proof that African history is full of heroes who fought not only with weapons, but with intelligence and vision. Her life reminds us that resistance does not always mean victory in battle, but refusing to accept injustice. Queen Nzinga's story matters because it challenges what many people think they know about history. It shows that Africa was not just a victim of empire, but a place of strong leaders who pushed back with everything they had. It shows that women have always been leaders, warriors, and thinkers, even when the world tried to silence them. Most of all, her story teaches courage. Courage to stand tall when others try to humiliate you. Courage to fight when defeat seems certain. Courage to adapt, survive, and protect your people no matter the cost. Queen Nzinga did not just defy empires. She defied the idea that power belongs only to those who take it by force. She proved that true power lies in the mind, the heart, and the refusal to kneel. And that is why, centuries later, her story still demands to be told. After Queen Nzinga's death, the land felt quieter, but her spirit did not leave. The people of Matamba and Ndongo mourned deeply, yet they did not feel defeated. They had watched a woman stand against one of the most powerful empires of the time and survive for decades. That memory alone became a weapon stronger than guns. Her strategies, her courage, and her refusal to surrender lived on in the minds of her people. The leaders who came after her tried to follow her example. They remembered how she balanced war and peace, strength and wisdom. Though none could fully replace her, her teachings shaped how resistance continued. The Portuguese may have gained more control over time, but it was never easy or complete. Every delay, every rebellion, and every act of defiance carried Queen Nzinga's influence. Among the common people, her name became legend. Parents told their children stories of the queen who spoke fearlessly to Europeans, who rode into battle, and who welcomed the broken and the hunted. To enslaved Africans and those living under colonial rule, her story became a quiet source of hope. If one woman could resist for so long, then freedom was not just a dream. Far beyond Angola, her legacy spread. Across Africa, and later among people of African descent around the world, Queen Nzinga became a symbol of resistance against oppression. Scholars began to question old colonial stories and uncover the truth. Artists painted her, writers spoke her name. Her life inspired movements that demanded dignity, equality, and self-rule. In modern times, Queen Nzinga is no longer hidden in the shadows of history. She stands proudly among the great leaders of the world. Her story is taught not just as a tale of war, but as a lesson in leadership. She showed that power does not always come from force, but from understanding your enemy, knowing yourself, and standing firm in your identity. Her life also changed how many people see African women. She proved that leadership has no gender. She ruled, commanded armies, negotiated treaties, and shaped history in a world that tried to deny her authority. Today, when African women rise into leadership, Queen Nzinga's name is often spoken as proof that they belong there. Queen Nzinga did not live to see a free Africa, but she planted the seeds of resistance that would grow long after her time. Empires rise and fall, but courage echoes through generations. Her story reminds the world that even in the face of overwhelming power, one determined voice can refuse to be silenced. And so her legacy continues, not carved only in stone or written in books, but carried in the spirit of all who choose to stand tall when the world tells them to kneel.